Okay, welcome to the next session, which is building cloud native microservices with Helidon. And I have one question to Dmitry. I always wanted to ask him this. He's in charge also of JSON-B and JSON-P, so JSON binding. Whom idea was the logo with the JSON and the binding? So I took a look at the logo, said, actually, what is it? And then I got it, JSON binding. So who's created the logo?
You mean JSON-B logo with a Duke, with a mask, and chain? Yeah. Actually, it's like a collective effort, right? So we were thinking how we can make a nice logo which people remember, right? And we decided that it's better to expire it from JSONs, right? You know, JSON from Friday 13th, right?
Okay.
With this mask, right, and this kind of stuff.
So I was really curious about the Helidon logo, but it doesn't look, that there is no more next step, so it cannot be exaggerated anymore, right?
Oh yeah, different people work on that, definitely.
Okay. So thank you. So now go to the full screen and start with the presentation. Helidon.
Yeah, starting it.
Screen sharing.
No, it doesn't work because you need to go off first.
I have to disappear? So wait a second, I can do this.
Yeah, now I can share.
Oh, this was not a joke. It's a truth. Okay.
No, it says there are no seats. I can't really share.
Chrome? Now something happens?
Now I can't share at all.
Okay, yeah, you can. Here I am. No worries.
There are no more seats left in this event, it says.
Well, try it again.
Oh, now I can share. Cool.
Yes.
Thanks for helping.
No problem.
Okay, I'm trying to share a different demo. Sorry. Sorry, my PowerPoint doesn't want to share. Sorry. Looks like it's presentation stuff. Let me find the presentation.
So let's give it a try again. Otherwise, if Thomas has your presentation, he can start.
No, just hang on a second. I'm trying to do it. It just doesn't want to.
Oh, no problem. Yeah.
I'll just restart PowerPoint, okay? My PowerPoint crashed.
We'll give it some time to recover.
Yeah, I need to force restart it. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, so it looks like it's off now, so I'm starting it again.
Good. And we're live. Everything happens when you're live. When you try.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's unfortunate.
Yes, and when we tried this previously, it worked like a charm. But now that we're live, we have some issues. Yeah.
I guess that this stuff eats a lot of resources. So I'm opening my presentation now. Okay, I have my presentation open. Now I'm starting. Yes, now it works. I'm switching back to my browser and starting sharing. Okay. So I hope everybody see my slides now, and I'm terribly sorry for this inconvenience, but PowerPoint decided to crash when I actually started sharing my slides. So sorry about that. Okay, so here is building cloud native microservices with project Helidon, and Dmitry Kornilov, it's me, and Thomas Langer, Helidon architect. We are the presenters. The agenda for today. So I will start, and I will talk about Helidon in general, what Helidon is, how we position it. After that, I'll talk about two flavors of Helidon, because Helidon is actually two frameworks, Helidon SE and Helidon MP. I'll explain each of them, demonstrate some features, and we'll compare Helidon SE and Helidon MP. I'll talk quickly about roadmap and plans, and a whole lot of that is for about 15-20 minutes. And after that, I will pass control to Thomas, who will actually do a live demo of Helidon. I'll try to be quick because I know that slide is boring. Right, so safe harbor is just a legal stuff saying that you should not make your critical business decision based on my presentation. And we are coming to Helidon. This is one sentence description of what Helidon is. And Helidon is just a set of Java libraries for developing microservices. I'm trying to emphasize here that Helidon is not an application solver. So this is basically Jakarta talk, and Helidon is not an application solver. Helidon, one of Helidon flavors, Helidon MP, is MicroProfile implementation, and this is how Helidon is connected to all of this. By the way, Helidon in Greek means swallow, and this is how Helidon is spelled in Greek. But I hope it's right. I'm not a Greek person, but I asked a Greek person to write it down. How we position Helidon? We position as open, innovative project supporting standards and supported active project. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Openness means that we are open source. We hosted at GitHub. So here is the link to our GitHub repository. And what's more important, we are Apache 2 licensed. And as a proof, I included a screenshot from GitHub here. So you see that it's Apache 2 here. Supported active project means that we, Helidon team, we actually have two teams. We have a US team and Prague team. We are providing open source support for Helidon. We have a website, helidon.io. I'm not going to open it because I'm sharing only one window. Thomas will open it and demonstrate you the website. The website has quite rich documentation, ASCII doc based. We actually have a comment from ASCII doc creator. He mentioned on Twitter that you folks have a documentation based on ASCII doc, how it's supposed to be. We're quite feature rich. We're quite proud of it. We also have some guides. There will be more guides coming. So the message is that we are trying to be friendly to our users. We also have a public Slack channel. Here is the link. There, if you join it, you can communicate directly with Helidon developers. Folks are quite active there. And if you have some issues, we are solving issues on GitHub Issues Tracker. Just submit an issue and guys will communicate with you. Now let's talk about how Helidon fits into the modern landscape of Java microservices framework. So I have these slides there. I selected some Java microservices frameworks. I sorted them out by the footprint size from smaller to larger, and categorized into three categories: micro frameworks, MicroProfile-based frameworks, and full-stack frameworks. So micro frameworks are small frameworks with smallest footprint, and because of that, limited in functionality. Samples are Javelin, Spark, Java, Micronaut. MicroProfile-based frameworks, I hope everybody know what MicroProfile is. Basically, frameworks implementing MicroProfile, OpenLiberty, Payara, Fortail. Quarkus is supposed to be here too. I just don't have a picture for Quarkus. And full-stack frameworks like Spring Boot, Drop Wizard. You can basically do whatever you want with frameworks, but the trade-off is footprint size. It's quite large. For instance, the average Spring Boot application is from 70 to 130 megs. So how Helidon fits here? we are actually covering two categories. We are in micro frameworks with our Helidon SE, and we are in MicroProfile-based frameworks with Helidon MP. So what's the difference? SE, it's a micro framework. Means that small footprint and limited functionality. The footprint size of Helidon SE application is just 7 megs, so it's really small, right? Tiny footprint. It's functional style, it's reactive non-blocking, and it's transparent. We call it no magic. No magic in this case means that there are no annotations, there is no dependency injection, so the development experience is just like with a pure Java application. It's a little bit expired of Express.js, if you know JavaScript framework. So our reactive web server are using similar approach, similar APIs. And I've seen on Twitter that someone said that it's similar to Go approach too. I'm not Go expert, so I can't say, but at least I've seen this tweet. And Helidon MP for comparison, it's MicroProfile implementation. Currently, we are implementing MicroProfile 2.2. Its small footprint is bigger than Helidon SE, so it's about 13 megs, 1.3. And the development experience is basically JakartaOne MicroProfile development experience with declarative style, with dependency injection, with all Jakarta components like CDI, JAX-RS, JSON, BP, which are part of MicroProfile. MicroProfile declares that this component should be supported. We support a little bit more. I'll talk about this a little bit later. And here are the code snippets, so you can visually see the difference in development experience. So this is SE application, this is MP application. Basically, this is a simple service which returns hello world when you do get on hello endpoint. So C in SE, we're using builders, we're using lambdas, and we just create a web server, pass routing there, and start it in a non-blocking way. And MP, this is just standard JAX-RS resource, so everybody's familiar with it. General architecture of Helidon is we have SE, and we build MP on top of that, and we also have a layer with CDI extensions. We have quite a few of them. Let's talk a little bit more about SE. So these are SE components. Main components are reactive web server, config, and security. Reactive web server supports out-of-the-box health check metrics and tracing, which is very important for microservices. It provides observability. We support gRPC, means that you can build a backend for your mobile applications using Helidon SE. And Helidon DB client, it's different. Like I'm using dashed outline here because it's work in progress. This functionality will allow you to access standard JDBC databases from Helidon SE in a reactive way. And small tag MP in the bottom right corner means that we support the same functionality in Helidon MP in Helidon MP flavor. Missing, and it means that with annotations, dependency injection, and so on, so and so. Reactive web server, one of Helidon SE components. This is what is expired by Express.js. It provides simple functional routing model with reactive flow API. It built on top of NetT. I was already mentioned that it provides open tracing metrics and health check support, and it also can be used to serve static content. Thomas, in his demo, will demonstrate how to use a reactive web server. Config. This is Helidon SE config. This is not Helidon MP config, so its functionality is a bit different. So we're using flexible typed, keyword type is here, config model. Support different data sources with layering. The data model is hierarchical, so it's not a flat map of properties. We can use a hierarchical model like a YAML file. It supports dynamic updates, means that you can build your application logic based on if configuration updated, you get notified, you do some stuff. and it's extensible with extensions. It's a standalone component, by the way. So, and reactive web server uses config to configure itself. And security. We support authentication, authorization, outbound security, auditing, and it's also extensible. You can extend it with your own stuff. And security is used to secure web server, and security is using config to configure itself. Basically, it works the way that in your configuration file, you put all security details and include some piece of code to enable it. Boom, it works. Helidon SE supports GraalVM. We don't support GraalVM and Helidon MP yet. We are working on it. It's supported in SE only. What's the advantages of GraalVM? Possibly you know about that. I'll just repeat quickly that it provides a really fast startup time in a tenth of milliseconds, really fast. And native executable. You can build a native executable from your application, which is for small applications smaller than your application plus JVM, right? So these are great advantages. We support 2 profiles, so you can build native image for your local operating system. So, for instance, if you are on a Mac, then you can build macOS executable. If you're on Linux, you can use Linux executable. And we provide Docker build. Basically, you build your Docker image, and in this case, it's a Linux image, and it's packaged in Docker container. Let's talk a little bit about performance, Helidon SE performance. So this slide I took from there, some article with information sources here, and it's about start type times of different frameworks. You see that Helidon SE is quite fast. It's really comparable with other frameworks like Quarkus and Vertex, and it's much faster than, for instance, Spring Boot and WebFlux. Another performance slide is from TechEmpower, the JSON request per second. The data source, again, I have a link here for the data source. And it indicates that Helidon SE is doing not bad. Micronaut is faster. We are working on making Helidon faster. It's good to have something faster because you have a goal, you know. But it's faster. It processes more requests than, for instance, Wizard and Spring. That's it about SE. Now let's talk about MP. MicroProfile. I hope everybody knows what MicroProfile is. I just included this slide because we have more than 1,000 people, and possibly someone doesn't know what MicroProfile is. And MicroProfile is open source community specification for enterprise Java microservices. And it includes specifications like health checks and metrics, fault tolerance, and so on. So they're basically cloud native APIs. It's hosted at Eclipse Foundation, so it's totally open source. And participants are Oracle, IBM, Red Hat, Payara, Atomic Tribe, Microsoft, and others. So all big players are there. They released 8 releases since 2016. Actually, maybe more. Maybe I didn't count 3.0 release, but let's say 8+ releases. And the official website is microprofile.io. So if you're interested, you definitely should go there and read about it. Why I'm talking about MicroProfile? Because Helidon MP, it's actually MicroProfile implementation. And here I listed all Helidon MP components, and green components are actually MicroProfile components, implementations of MicroProfile. So MP config, metrics, health checks, fault tolerance, JWT, Open API, Open Tracing, and REST client. So other stuff here is orange stuff is Jakarta components. So these 3 required by MicroProfile, and these 2, JP and GTA, it's supported by Helidon MP, like extra. We also have gRPC stuff in MP2. And a small tag, SE, means that we support the same functionality in Helidon SE, but in Helidon SE, non-blocking, no magic flavor. Plans. So that's the plans. So earlier this year, actually in February 14th, St. Valentine's Day, I remember it well, we released Helidon 1.0. We added GraalVM support. I actually don't want to concentrate more on that. Let's talk about future. So we are working on MicroProfile 3.0 support and Hibernate support. And we expect to add more features at the end of this year, maybe at the beginning of next year. And these features are more GraalVM support, HTTP multi-path, HTTP2, reactive HTTP client, Helidon DB client, I mentioned it a little bit already, and support of messaging Kafka. That's it. I finished my boring stuff, and I'm passing control, stopping sharing to Thomas, who will do a live demo of Helidon. Please, Thomas.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right. So Dmitry promised I will show a few things, so let me do that. I will just close. Oh, I accidentally closed my screen sharing. Sorry about that. Let's try it again. All right, there we go. So this is our main web page. The most important part is on the top right. There is documentation. If you click on documentation, you get to our page where you can find documentation for all our components. And probably the most important one to start with is the guides section. So if I click on the guides, the things that I will be showing here are actually based on the Quick Start SE and Quick Start MP. So if you want to follow the stuff that I will be doing here, you can just go to Quick Start. You can copy the Maven archetype thing and generate a project, and you will see exactly the same stuff that I am using on this demo. Second thing that may be interesting is my GitHub repo. I have a Helidon conference project that I keep updating with every version of Helidon, and that has some more complicated stuff that can be done with Helidon. So you can have a look at how to do security, how to connect services together, and so on. And actually, I will use this during this presentation to guide us through the steps. So I have actually prepared myself. So I did the first steps before we started this conference, because that's always the most tricky part, to get your connectivity correctly. So I already have 2 projects. So let me go back to my IDE. If you want the link to the to there, you can see it here. So I've created a Helidon SE and Helidon MP modules in my project, and now I will show how that works. So we are mostly using Maven. Actually, if you get the quick start, there is, I think, some Gradle file, but we don't support Gradle heavily. We are a Maven shop mostly, but you should be able to use it with any build tool as long as you do some stuff the hard way. So let's have a look on the quick start. So SE, as we said, this is like Java SE approach. So what you do, you actually need to say the things that you want to do. So if you look on the main class, we will find out that there is a section that actually does all the things that need application. So we create configuration that's reads the default configuration, which is application.yaml if you have YAML on the class path, which I do prefer. Then we create server configuration, which gets its configuration from our config. So let's have a look on the configuration file for it. So this is our YAML configuration file. As Dmitry said before, we have a tree structure. So even though this could be transferred into simple properties map, we have decided that we want to have it a bit more structured. So I will show that later on in the resource. So the next step that we do, we create routing and then start our web server. So routing is the real meat of Helidon SE, where you say what you want to do on which path. So here we can see what we are doing in our quick start. And this is maybe a good time to say that our quick starts provide you with a Hello World application. So it really is very simple, but it contains all the cloud features that you want to have in your application. So this application will have health checks enabled, metrics enabled. It's very easy to set up tracing. And we already have all the resources you need to do things like building a Docker image for your application, building a native image for your application. And in the README, there is also a guide how to deploy into Kubernetes. So if you just get the quick start, you should be able to do all the stuff that you want to do with an application to deploy it into your cloud. So let's skip the stuff that is for later, and we will start with the service, which is the actual business logic in our case. So the grid service has 3 endpoints. We have the default endpoint, which just gives you hello world. We have the name endpoint, which gives you a named hello world. And then we have a put method that allows you to change the greeting. So we can see that it's as simple as that. So if I go here and I decide that I want to do a different get, which will probably need to be moved up so it doesn't conflict, but let's say I want to do hello, and you will find out that you can do it as simple as a lambda. So I could just say server response, and as this is reactive, you actually never return stuff. You need to say I want to send data, and here you have options. Either you say, for example, string, so of course you could say hi, or you can send a publisher for the proper reactive support with back pressure if you want to do it so. And this is really where the Helidon SE shines, because it gives you a full reactive approach, so you can really serve a huge number of parallel requests with 4 threads without blocking them. Okay, so let's get it back to the original state. So now the handler is just saying, okay, I'll show it in the send response. I will create a JSON object, give it a message, and send it. So now let's have a look how it works. For this purpose, I actually native image, so I can show you how started. So we have a 19 megs native image. We can start. We can see that our application started, and now I can use curl to simply invoke the endpoints. Of course, this is kind of not EclipseCon, this is JakartaOne, right? So it works. It's a hello world example. It should work. The interesting stuff is when I start using one of the endpoints that is really cloud important. So let's have a look on health endpoint. Oh, not -i, of course. I'm sorry about that. So we can see that we have one health check that is like a built-in health check for native image, which is heap memory. We can do metrics, which will give us all the metrics that are mandatory. And let me just change it so I get JSON, because the default is, this is based on MicroProfile spec. We get format that is not so nice to view. So we can see that we have some base metrics. These are prescribed by the MicroProfile specification. And we have decided to use the MicroProfile specification even in our Helidon SE, because it gives you a same capabilities both for our SE and MP environment. So the format is from the MicroProfile spec. Of course, we have some built-in vendor metrics. So for example, here we have the requests meter that will give you overall information about requests coming to our web server. Now, I could do exactly the same thing for our MP application. So let me just switch to the MP. I will stop my SE application and I will start my MP. I need to build it first because I think I didn't. And I think that we saw it on the previous presentations that when you are sharing your screen, that's some heavy load. Oh, beautiful. Feels like old times, we had to actually wait for stuff to happen. All right, so come on, come on. Now we have to test it. We will get there eventually. I thought that Zoom is the only one who is consuming all the resources of your computer, but it seems that this Crowdcast has very similar problems. So, okay, I have waited so much time, so I will wait until the end, and then I will show the implementation of the MP. Very good. One thing I can show already, you may have noticed that our tests are running on a random port, which is quite important if you want to run tests in parallel. So if you saw it was some port 60,000 something, but if I run my application, it will run on the port that is configured for the production, and I will show that in a while. So we can see that we have weld starting up because this is CDI, and once that starts, we get our endpoints, and the application is exactly the same. So if you look at my examples, you will find out that both of the applications have exactly the same business logic. One is just written in MicroProfile, and one is written using Helidon SE. So we can see again, we get the metrics, we can get the health checks. Only we have a bit more because some of them are not supported by Graal, and of course I can do some proper endpoint /greet, and we will get a nice message. So now let's go back and see how this is implemented in MP. So I will close my SE and let's have a look here. So MicroProfile means Jakarta. So there is a Jakarta application which has one resource class. When I go to my resource class, it's listening on the /greet endpoint, and I have all the methods that we saw before. So there is the default message, there is the message with a parameter name, and there is the put request that allows you to change the greeting. So the functionality is the same. It's just that the main method will be obviously much easier. Here, a lot of magic is happening. So just by running this single line, everything will get done automatically. It can be even easier than that. In this case, we have decided to explicitly start the server because we are going to reconfigure it. But if you wanted to, you could just run a MicroProfile, Helidon MicroProfile.main, which would start everything automatically without a main class in your application, as long as your application class is annotated as a bean defining annotation. All right, so very simple. Again, configuration. In this case, we are using the pure MicroProfile config stuff. So it's the meta-env/microprofile-config.properties. And again, we have server.port and server.host. And now it's time when I wanted to show tree structure of our config. So let's go back to let's start changing stuff. So if I go to my grid service, I'm actually using the configuration to obtain the message that we are showing on the screen. So you can see here that there is app.greeting, which is my configuration. So what I could do, yeah, main methods are nice. What I can do here, I can actually say config, please give me app, and this will give me a tree node that contains the whole app node and all the properties under that. And of course, on that, I can say, give me the greeting. And then I can say, I want to have it as a string, and this behaves like an optional. So I can say, and I have a default, which is ciao for whatever reason. The good thing here is that you can actually take a subtree of your configuration and send it to a component, so it doesn't need to get all the configuration of your whole application. It can only get the stuff that is important for that component. And we are using that heavily in Helidon ourselves. Okay. So in this case, I'm actually using atomic reference because we are modifying it using a put request, but otherwise we could just store it in a field if you didn't want to change it. So now we want to run our MP application on a different port, which obviously is important because you don't want to have a conflict, because right now if I start my SE application, it would just fail. So let's stop my MP, and now I will switch to my IDE and run stuff from here. And I will change it by changing configuration. So here we have the MicroProfile config properties, and I will just change the port to 8081. I mean, this is configuration 101. let's do configuration 201, and that's how our testing works. So I talked about using a custom port when testing, and we achieve this by having microprofile-config.properties in our test sources, and I'm giving it a higher ordinal than the one of the default. What this means is that when we load the config sources, this one will win over the one configured in your main application. And here, if you say server port -1, it's a keyword for us to use a random port. So this way you can have custom configuration for your testing. You can have custom built-in defaults packaged with your application. And of course, then you can overload these using external file sources. And let's go to that now. So for MicroProfile, I want to use YAML. As I said before on the chat, I like YAML. It's for configuration purposes, it's able, it's quick to write. So let's add support for YAML into our MicroProfile application, which is probably already there. And we will add a new YAML. So let me just create a conf directory, not a module, sorry about that. Console, yeah, directory, please. Thank you very much. And I will create a file called mp.yaml, which will be my new configuration file. And okay, in this file, I want to override some of the stuff, obviously, that is being done. So, for example, I want to use a different greeting. I will use hello with an A instead of hello with an E. And I want this file to be loaded as part of our startup sequence. And this is the time when the main method comes in handy and main class, because I have the control over the server startup, and I can actually... Why is Adam saying that I'm brave? I'm not sure about that. All right, so let's change this. And one of the things that we use in Helidon quite heavily is Fluent API. So what we like is that you can write stuff as you go. So we use builder patterns. So in this case, I will say I want a builder, and I want to use a customized configuration. And let me just copy it now from my off-screen helper, so I don't have to type it in because it's obviously slightly slower. So what I do here is I create my configuration, and I want to use my configuration sources. So I say I want to use file. I want to watch it for changes. We may want to talk about it later. And I want to add the class path config sources that we have. So here, now I can just say .config, and I'm using the new configuration. Now, the only thing I need to do here is I need to change my configuration in IntelliJ, because usually it starts in the wrong place. Yep, so I just want to start in my module. All right, and now if I start my application, we should get the modified file. And of course, this is an artificial example, but this is one of the main things that I like about the configuration, and it's both in Helidon and in the MP, that you have the capacity to add custom config sources and override configuration based on location. So you can have a built-in default, then you can have something in your test, and you can have something in your development environment, and obviously you will have a configuration file as a config map in your Kubernetes cluster. And you can set up your application that it will automatically read these config sources and just work whichever environment you deploy it to. And I see that I will not be able to show everything because really this is just too slow. So, and of course I have changed my port to be 8081. So we can see that now we have the modified configuration. So very quick example how to override your application configuration with an external file that will be placed in your Docker image and may be provided by Kubernetes. So I will now go into some customization of the MicroProfile stuff that we use. So first one, what I want to do is I want to add a metric. So we have seen that we have vendor metrics and we have base metrics that are required by the spec. And now we want to add something custom. So let's say that I want my resource, and I will use the default message because that's kind of the simplest one. And I want it to be timed. That's a nice one. So I just annotated as timed. And, well, you are done. So this is the beauty of annotations and things happening magically. This will be a timed method right now. Of course, in Helidon SE, we don't like magic. So this was one of the architectural decisions that we don't want things to happen magically. We want things to be coded. So if you want to create a metric in SE, you will need to do something more. So let me quickly show that. I'll just jump to my grid service. So obviously you need to get your registry factory for metrics. Let me just copy paste. Even typing is slow when the conference is running. So we get our application metrics, and then we say, oh, I want to create a timer. And of course, this is the first part, that you create an instance of a timer that is registered in your registry. The second part is you actually need to do something with the timer. And we, again, go to the default handler. And let me just show how that works in a reactive environment. And again, I'm not typing because I would die of boredom here. So what I do, I start the timer at the beginning of the method. Then I say send the response. And then I actually listen on the response that please, when this message is sent, stop the timer. So whenever that happens, whenever web server writes the last bytes into the stream, the timer will be completed. So same API, again, the timer is actually from MicroProfile, but in a reactive environment. And now I will be even braver than usual. I will actually do more change than one before I restart the servers because of how it's slow. So let's add a health check. And because I'm already in SE, let's start with the SE health checks. So where would I do that? So in the main method of SE, we are creating the health support. So here you can see that I'm doing health support builder. Then I register the built-in health checks of Helidon. And here I can add a custom health check. By the way, we are already running on health check 2.0, so there is the readiness and liveness checks. So if you use the previous versions of MicroProfile, there was just add health check. Luckily for us, this actually can be backward compatible. So what I will do here, I will create a custom health check that will be very, very simple. It will just succeed and it will send the timestamp back. So I will call it custom. And to make things easier, I will remove the default one, so we just get the one. So what I did now, I have added a health check and I have added a custom metric. So let's see how that works. I will use SE because that's faster to start. You don't have to load CDI, so it's that's another advantage of the no magic environment. You don't need to do stuff when you start your application. You can see it's up. So I will first at least invoke the endpoint. So our metric gets increased. Okay, and now let's try the metrics. So is the one? No, this is health checks. Let's try health checks first. It came up. So we can see that we have a custom health check. It says up and it gives us our current time in milliseconds. Obviously, this should be something more complicated, such as pinging the database or doing whatever checks you can to work with your backend to make sure everything is up and running. The next one is the metrics, and in this case, if I do metrics, it will return me a lot of stuff. So let's just do application metrics. And we can see that we have a timer in. I managed to hit it 5 times, so quite fast. And there is a bunch of numbers that give you all the information you need. Obviously, these numbers are not that good when you are trying it here, but if it's running in production, these numbers are actually significant. So you can get like real information about how long it takes to execute your methods and how often people call them. So this was a very crash course in health checks and metrics. Let me go back to MicroProfile. And again, adding a health check in MicroProfile is, in this case, slightly more complicated, but it has different options for you. So let me create a new one. I will create a grid health check, maybe. Please. I want to type, yes. No. Okay. So one of the things that makes it different is that this is an application scope bean. And obviously, if you have an application scope bean, you can use CDI to inject whatever you want. So here, if it was a database check, you would inject your data source and do some checking on the data source. Also, I annotated with liveness to add it to the correct health checks. And voila, that's it. In this case, I'm comparing the message that is currently set to hello, and if it's different, then the health check fails. So that's the usability of injection, where it makes your life slightly easier. On the other hand, you pay for it, and you can see that you pay for it with the startup time. And sometimes you pay for it that you are not 100% sure what's happening behind the scenes because somebody else is taking care of it. So let me fix my GitHub because I was typing over there. So metrics and health checks are done. Maybe one other thing that is useful here is to connect the services. So how much time do we have? 13 minutes. So let me quickly do that. I will call the SE service from the MP service to show 2 features of MicroProfile. It's fault tolerance and tracing. So let's go to our resource. And now I'm really sorry about this. I would slightly sped up implementation. So let's start with our target. So what I'm doing now, I'm adding a target to our SE service, and I will add a new method that will call that client. So let's do that. Let me just put here an outbound method. So what I do here, I ask the target to go to the path based on the name that I get from the request, and I request as an application JSON, and I just return it back. So this is basically proxying to our SE service. Now, when I start it, fingers crossed that it's fast. And if not, anyway, I can start with the fault tolerance. So while we are waiting, I will just add a fallback method here. So fallback method is a way how you can, what you can do when you fail to execute a method. So it started. So let's do it. So I will go to my MP service, and this time we want to do the outbound stuff. And hello, hello. So we got a response back. Of course, the problem here is that when I shut down my SE service, and I do the same, I'll get an internal server error because Jersey just fails to execute. So yeah, the server is not available. This method heavily fails. And one of the ways how to get around this is to say, I want to use fallback. So let's fail over to the correct method that I have just created. So again, simple annotation here. I'm saying, please, if this method fails, fall back to the other method and return failed with the name that we have. So in real world, you would probably ask the cache to return data if your database fails, or you provide some nice customized response that is usable for the request that just failed. Okay, so now when I rerun my endpoint, I get a nice response. Of course, it says failed, but at least I'm not getting a 500 here. I think I have still time for one more thing before we go to questions and answers, and I will do a tracing. So Helidon supports open tracing, MicroProfile open tracing API, and actually we have supported the open tracing API from the beginning of the project. And let's now add the dependency on a tracer. Let me just find it so I don't have to type it in again. So I already have Zipkin tracer running. As I always say, a disclaimer, Zipkin is a third-party tool. Luckily for us, it implements the API, so we can easily use it with Helidon. So let me just add it to dependencies of both projects. And of course, in SE, we need to do stuff. MP automatically picks it up. In SE, we need to tell our server that tracer is configured. Trying not to do too much magic here. So again, in my main method of SE, I want to register the tracer. So let's jump there, and here we are creating server configuration. We will say tracer builder.create. This is an abstraction in Helidon because we want to use our configuration to set up the tracing. So let's do it. Now we have tracing in SE and in MP. So now I'm being brave. Somebody said I'm brave because I like YAML, but I'm being brave because I run this without making sure that everything is set up correctly. But we'll see. So let's stop MP and run it. Okay. Something is happening. Very good. Okay, and now we can see that it failed because I have misconfigured my application. And one of the things you must provide is the service name that will be part of the tracing. And the reason is that we cannot guess it. Okay, let's just do it this way. So I will just say this is my SE app. And of course, in MP, it's the same. So here I will do tracing.service. And this will be MP app. So the good thing is that all the libraries are being read, and we are trying to create a tracer. Let's see how fast this is. I will give it 1.5 minutes, and if it doesn't start, we will just continue with the rest. So we can see that this one, at least SE, has connected to tracer. Now let's connect also MP. going there, getting there slowly. Let's do a quick one. I will invoke a service in SE. And then, of course, we will try the outbound stuff. So let's see if it started. Not yet. Oh, there we go. Okay, and now let's see if the magic worked. So I will do find traces. And the magic didn't work. So probably my POM file didn't reload. So at least we see the SE application. Obviously, you should see the MP application as well. But I think that on each presentation, there should be at least one thing that doesn't work. So thank you for your attention. That concludes my presentation. And if you want to know more and you happen to be on Code One in San Francisco, please come to our sessions. We have quite a lot of them.
Okay, guys. Well, we will end the broadcast, but if there are any follow-up questions, you can answer them possibly in the chat, just for the guys who are not necessarily going to be in San Francisco. But for everyone else, please feel free to see us all in San Francisco. So with that, we'll conclude the session, and I will invite you to move on to the next one with Steve Milic. So see you in the next session. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.